Today we got a special guest. I am super excited to introduce to you Nico Zabalza. He is the founder of Black Lotus Shilajit, the premium brand committed to delivering high quality Shilajit. We're going to be discussing all of that in a moment. With over a decade of meditation, herbalism, and alternative medicine, Nico has a deep understanding of natural health. His brand is known for its rigorous testing standards and commitment to quality, with over 250,000 satisfied customers worldwide. Nico, welcome to the program, and thanks very much for being on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And I'm joined with Dr. Jason Dubois. Jason, how you doing?
Brennan, great as always. The doc is in, so I'm excited.
You want to start us off?
Yeah. Nico, I met you at a recent trade show. I was down in Orlando and you were at one of our larger trade shows, walked by your booth, was immediately attracted to it. This is an ingredient that I've been doing a little bit of research on, and I'm so excited to have an authority like you on to talk about Shilajit or Shilajit. What's the correct way to pronounce it? Let's start there.
Yeah, it's either or. So there's no like real, because it's a Sanskrit word. So Shilajit. I normally say Shilajit. But in Sanskrit, it's pronounced Shilat, actually.
Okay. So basic question, first one, softball for you. What is it? Because I kind of know, but you're the expert. Tell me, what is it like exactly?
Yeah, so Shilajit is called mineral pitch. It's essentially a resin that has formed in the crust of the earth over millions of years. It's the product of mountains forming. So when, forests, organic matter, fossils get trapped underneath the tectonic plates, as the mountains are growing, plates are hitting each other. One is going under, one is going up. That all that matter and fossils gets crushed and processed and with pressure and heat over millions of years. And it goes through several geothermal and biochemical processes during that time that kind of turn it into its final form, which is this black goo that literally breaks rocks at the tops of the mountains and starts oozing out. And it has, a ton of minerals, vitamins, amino acids, antioxidants due to all these amazing things just in the earth.
So is it indigenous to like one particular region? Does any like one culture own it per se, or is it throughout the world?
Yeah, it's actually throughout the world. There was discovered by the people in India, Tibet, and Pakistan in the Himalayan mountains. They would see goats and monkeys eating it at the tops of the mountains, and that's how it was incorporated into their native medicine, like Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine, Persian medicine. And due, to its effects, they experienced a lot of benefits, and that's how it was kind of put into their practice. But it does form throughout the world. So we actually get ours from Siberia in the Altai Mountains. But it was primarily consumed in the Himalayan region. But also there's a U.S. Shilajit that comes from Utah in the Rocky Mountains. There's Shilajit in Chile. And pretty much any old mountains throughout the world, they're going to have Shilajit.
Is there a benefit of getting it out in Siberia?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Sorry. Is there a benefit? Sorry, Jason. Is there a benefit of getting it from out in Siberia as opposed to nice and local? Or
Yeah, so we found that the Siberian Shilajit has the most nutrients, antioxidants, and is the purest that we have tested and found ourselves or tried ourselves. Most people do feel the difference when they try other kinds of Shilajit compared to the one that we get. And I believe there is good Shilajit in all these different mountains, but since Altai Mountains are in such a pristine, untouched, remote region, and they're almost 1 billion years old, compared to the Himalayas that are 50 million years old, we found that is supreme source that, from our research.
So when you talk about sourcing premium ingredients, and I'm a nut on this, as far as like for my brand, and I know Brendan's the same about like getting the best of the best ingredients.
Yeah.
When it comes to Shilajit, what are you looking for? Like one material versus another, like what are you focusing on in that particular material that says, okay, this one's better, or I want this one? What do you zero in on?
Yeah, so we look for, physical properties first, which is that it's a thick, pitch black paste.
Okay.
It fully dissolves in water. It has this like smoky, earthy, sweet, salty smell, and taste. And then the texture of it is important, for us, because we don't want it to have too much moisture or be watered down at all. We want it to be the thick paste, just how it comes out of the mountain. And also then we do lab testing here in the US for each batch. And we've done lab testing for many different Shilajits that we've, gotten to try from other suppliers. So we test for, bacteria, mold, yeast, heavy metals, and then fulvic and humic acid content, pH. So there are a lot of factors, but yeah, at this point, we've had 8 years of experience with Shilajit, and we have a really good idea of what to look for.
A quick question. I know you mentioned a whole bunch of things in there, and I did a little bit of I mean, I've been taking Shilajit for a number of years now. So I'm a big believer. And for anybody who's watching right now who just doesn't have any background on Shilajit whatsoever, this stuff is really quite remarkable. It's got mineral content, it's got vitamin content, it has enzymes in it. There's one thing that I wasn't really aware of. Carbon 60. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So carbon-60 is a very rare carbon molecule that forms molecularly a perfect, like soccer ball, hexagonal structure. And it is, as far as research goes, the most powerful antioxidant, magnetically charged or ionically charged, so that it's an extremely powerful binder and conductor of energy in the body. And it has the ability to go everywhere in the body and kind of aid in the functions of central nervous system, the hormone system, the blood, everything, just because it's a carbon molecule. We're made of carbon. And the fascinating thing about the Shilajit is that, like I said, it forms in the crust of the earth, and the particular layer of the crust that it forms is from about 3 to 500 or 600 million years ago. And during that time, there was just oceans everywhere. And they find seashells at the top of the Himalayan mountains and the Altai mountains, and these fossils. And in the ocean, there are all these ammonite creatures that were cephalopods, or what, I don't remember what they're called, but the crystal or their shells were called ammonites. They're these spirals. And those shells were formed, millions of years ago, when they were getting minerals actually from meteorites that had fallen to the earth, billions or hundreds of millions of years ago. And those meteorites are what contain carbon-60. And so those creatures absorbed the carbon-60 that was available in the ocean at that time into their shells. And then those shells fossilized and then went to the bottom of the ocean and formed that layer of the earth. And this is what they look like here, the ammonite fossil.
Yeah.
And so
nice.
Shilajit is primarily made of the minerals from these fossils. And the person that wrote these books, the professor, he wrote this book. These are the only 2 textbooks we've ever been able to find about like bridging the gap between the mythological, like Ayurvedic herbal system of medicine to actually a pharmacological chemist type of research about Shilajit. And this entire book is about how basically he tests the meteors that fell to Earth. Like he tests all these different meteors, gets the fullerene samples, which carbon-60 is called carbon-60 fullerene, and he tests the ammonite crystals in the fossils, and that's what has the carbon-60, and that's why it's in the Shilajit. This is a super fascinating kind of research that he did about all these different meteors and comparing minerals in the fossils to the minerals in the meteorites, and then to the minerals in Shilajit.
So Nico, so all shilajit contains carbon-60?
From what I know, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
That
Yeah,
was
there
called
might
the
be,
Bucky
there
Ball,
is,
wasn't it?
yeah.
Wasn't it right?
Yeah.
The
It's
Bucky
called
Ball. I
a
remember that.
Buckminster fullerene is like the
Right.
official
Was there like a
name, I
professor out of
think.
UMass or something? I don't know.
Yeah, he's the
I
one
think
that
so.
discovered it.
Yeah. So it's for people out there who are trying to figure out, well, what's the benefit of this? It's incredible antioxidant, isn't it?
Yes.
So when it's in your body, and like when we're talking about, like anti-aging, specifically, a lot of people have a tendency to focus on mitochondrial health and oxidative breakdown of those mitochondria, of the mitochondria. The C60 seems to be really important in that. And there's probably other components within Shilajit that do this, but with some of the research, and again, some of this research is going to be in the show notes. I've been able to identify that Shilajit has a positive impact on increasing NO, nitrous oxide, and SOD, superoxide dismutase. So I don't know if that's the buckyball that's doing that, if that's C60, but clearly it's reducing oxidative stress, which is incredibly important in today's, unfortunately, highly stressful and toxic environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Carbon-60 definitely plays a big role in, antioxidant aspect of Shilajit. The other amazing compound is the fulvic acid, which
Yep.
does make up 70 to 80% of the Shilajit by weight. It's the highest source of anything in nature. So those two things combined are, a force to be reckoned with in the body to, trap those, or, get rid of those oxidative cells that have died, or, all these toxins that are plaguing the body in different ways and masticizing into different things.
So, Nico, I know there's different forms. I've got two forms that you sent me, the tablets and the elixir. But what are you finding is what customers want most, or what do you recommend? Like someone new to Shilajit, where do you recommend?
Yeah, so we specialize in pure raw Shilajit. So we make all our products with the raw resin. We don't do extracts or powders or, standardized stuff. We just use the pure resin. This is, the 100-gram jar. This is what the pure resin looks like on its own. It's like this black, shiny
Okay, that's
pitch.
black.
So this you would scrape out a pea size, dissolve it in water. You can put it under your tongue. There's kind of some, it's a user experience. There's some process to this. So most people like the resin, but they don't want to mess with it in the morning. It's kind of a process. So we make these tablets that are definitely my go-to. They come in the blister pack, but it's the exact same resin, just compressed into a tablet. There's nothing else added, no binders, fillers, or preservatives or anything. These are definitely our best sellers overall, and my favorite to travel with, and you swallow them. You don't have to taste it too much because it definitely has a strong, smoky, bitter, earthy taste. Some people say it's like a campfire, kind of like charcoal.
That's a good description.
Yeah, or like pipe resin. We've heard burnt tires, all kinds
I'm
of stuff.
telling you, Brendan, the
Burnt
best
tires.
stuff tastes terrible, man. It's
Okay,
Yeah.
tablet is, yep.
Yeah, but we have a honey also, which is an awesome alternative. You just one
Oh,
teaspoon.
that's a good idea.
Yeah, it's really good. And then we have a tincture, which is made with a coconut oil derived glycerin, super high
Yeah.
quality. We used to have droppers. We're switching to a little pump now just to make it easier. So you just pump it in your mouth or into your drink. That's a good alternative also. We just wanted to make it easier for people. They're all
Yeah.
equally as potent, pure, and absorbable. It's just for what people, yeah, want to take. People always ask, what's the best way? And I'm like, it's the way that you're going to take it
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
consecutively every day. So,
And I also read that you can put it in your coffee. So I'm a big coffee drinker, right? And so I'm
yeah.
always drinking coffee. And I've also taken the tablets in different ways. I've swallowed the tablets. I've put the tablets under my tongue. Um, the coffee thing appeals to me. But there's no like when I do that, I'm not interfering with the properties of the ingredient, am I?
No, no. So,
Okay.
unless the coffee is directly boiling,
Okay.
it's not gonna affect it at all. It's very like stable overall. We like to keep it under 105 degrees in our processing, just to say it is still the raw product. But it's been in the earth and it's been going through stuff for a long time. It's not gonna like change just because it got heated up in your coffee. It's withstood
Okay.
all kinds of stuff within the earth, and
Yeah.
it's in its final form. It's not gonna go bad ever. So yeah, it's kind of like honey, where in 3,000 years this jar is still just as good.
And it makes sense. I remember somebody told me, they go, well, how do you do the tar? And I'm like, well, and I'll tell you, that's tars. It's thick and it's hard. Like you could bend a spoon with that stuff. So as you
Yeah,
said, you just take out a little bit and you put it in water. I've been putting it in hot water, and somebody was like, no, 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 you can't put it in hot water. You'll end up, destroying some of the enzymatic activity of it. It's like put it in cold water. Don't worry, it'll still go in solution. And he was absolutely right. So interesting.
yeah. It's water soluble. In warm water it does dissolve slightly faster. But I, when we used to make limeade, we would just throw a couple grams into a gallon of water and you let it sit for an hour, and then shake it, and it's fully dissolved.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. Well, let's get into the effects of testosterone. I'm gonna leave this over to Jason because this is Jason's wheelhouse, I think, because it does seem to have an effect on testosterone for the guys out there, and for the women out there who's his fathers or husbands or whatever. They understand, and obviously the guys do, that when you start transitioning, let's say from 30 to 40, that testosterone drops off quite significantly, and then from 40 to 50, it's a big drop off. So, how does Shilajit end up handling testosterone levels?
Yeah, so that's one of the main things that it's touted for and has been marketed for, particularly in India in the past, and pre 2019 when it became popular, everybody knew it as a libido enhancer, sex drive enhancer, testosterone booster for men. And that's an amazing benefit, but it's just one of many. And the way that it acts on testosterone, it doesn't necessarily, you take it and it increases your testosterone, because if a woman took it, since it is an adaptogen, it's not going to increase a woman's testosterone. It's just going to help regulate the hormone system and the organ system so that you have the accurate normal amount of hormones in your body. And yeah, as men age, the testosterone lowers naturally, but you can mitigate the drop off, especially since today, with everything that's going on with hormone disruptors, plastic, all these things, toxins, testosterone's at an all-time low,
Right.
where if it keeps dropping the way it's dropping, men will have zero at some point, which is not
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it
I think I read somewhere that today's 20-year-olds are about 50% of testosterone where they were about 30 or 40 years ago. I mean, it's very significant. And I agree, there's
Yeah.
plastics, there's all kinds of endocrine disrupting chemicals in the environment. It's bad.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
also
So
spent some time researching this because Shilajit has many different benefits. But for me, the testosterone component really appealed to me. So so some personal things is I am over the age of 40,
Are you?
50, right? Plus, right? It doesn't matter. But I'd say in the last 5, 6, 7 years, I've been going to see my doctor, and my testosterone levels have been dropping, and I didn't really assimilate it until my fiance, forced me to go. I was struggling with energy. I was struggling with mood, and I come to find out my testosterone was like below 200,
Yeah.
which was really, really low. And I ended up going on testosterone replacement therapy and getting those numbers back up. But now that I've kind of learned more about Shilajit, it was impressive. So I did some research, and I found that there was one really well designed clinical trial, randomized, double blind, placebo controlled. This is like the gold standard that I look for when I'm evaluating anything, whether it be a drug or a natural remedy. And they found that if you were to consume Shilajit 250 milligrams twice a day for upwards of 90 days, it had an increase in both free testosterone and total testosterone, as high as 20% over placebo. So I always like data to back up, whenever we can, I always like good, solid data to back up anything. Folklore medicine is great. It has a lot of merit, and it's important to study that. But the clinical trial part of that impressed me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I found quite a few clinical studies like that with testosterone, sperm count, fertility,
Yeah.
sperm motility. It really helps the reproductive system in general as a whole. Actually, our first ever wholesale customer, we were vending at an event, and he was in his 60s, and we told him about Shilajit. He was also a vendor there, and he got one just to try it out because he thought it was interesting, had never heard of it. And then the next day, he came back. He shared this story that he has ED, and I won't get too graphic here, but he said he had the best night of his life, and he bought 20 of them the next day. So I was like, wow, this thing really works. And yeah, that does have to do with testosterone and, blood flow, circulation, all kinds of stuff.
So
But
there's immediate benefits, and then
yeah,
there's the longer term benefits, and I think that's fascinating because testosterone is linked to other ailments. So one of the things I noticed about Shilajit, it talks about helping with like anxiousness or anxiety, and to me that ties back to testosterone levels. We
yeah,
know in clinical studies that a low testosterone um, has a higher incidence of anxiety and depression in men. And when we replace the testosterone to normalize those levels, we notice that the men that have normal testosterone have a lower incidence of depression, and they're less anxious. And I think, which says a lot about the state of the U.S. right now, and men
yeah,
in general with their low testosterones, and they're feeling anxious and they're feeling depressed. And sometimes just simply getting that testosterone level up can help with that significantly. Brendan, have you seen that in the news? Can you echo that? Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Not only that, but I've seen it with my friends and family and with people who called in. So whenever I get a male that calls in over the age of 40, I always tell them, look, the first thing that you ought to be concerned about is your testosterone levels. And I typically tell them to jump on DHEA, but they absolutely could do Shilajit. And, for folks who
Hmm.
have just overall health issues, I typically tell them fumic acid, go out there and get some of that. This product actually combines both of those things. Now, I don't know exactly what the mechanism of action is when it comes to Shilajit and how it increases testosterone. But I can tell you that when I end up making those recommendations and folks come back to me, one of the things that they always say is, I got better sleep, I'm less anxious, and I'm less depressed. And a lot of times, these folks are not going to tell you that they were on antidepressants, but once they go on DHEA, they're like, I was able to relieve myself of that. And so, once again, this is unconventional medicine to sort of keep you from having to go to the pharmaceutical products, right? So, yeah, I absolutely think it's a great thing. And
The other
Yeah.
and
thing,
Nico, I don't know
yeah,
if that's something that you've seen with your customers too. I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. We get a lot of athletes that use it for, performance enhancement, not in an illegal way, but just, if you have higher testosterone, the better you're going to perform. And there's studies on Shilajit where it helps muscle gain, muscle retention,
Oh, big
endurance,
time. Yeah.
stamina, joint health, and primarily for men, those are all things that naturally happen when you have high testosterone. You just
Yeah.
naturally last longer, have bigger muscles, muscle retention, yeah, more explosive
Yeah.
and more driven overall to like do those things, and yeah, it kind of makes effort easy, or not easy, but
Yep.
not as hard, and
And
that's
you
why a
you
lot
actually
of
mentioned,
athletes use it.
yeah, absolutely. You actually mentioned two things that I think they're really important. So when you end up getting to the advanced stage, which Jason and I are,
getting there.
unfortunately,
I'm almost there.
um,
I'm not as far along as
unfortunately,
you, Brendan, but
I want to push it
okay.
on you.
So
I'll tell you that I'm on the advanced side of things, which is perfectly fine. But I will. So the flip side of this is, as you get older, the muscle ends up atrophying. You lose muscle mass, and when you
yeah,
lose muscle mass, a lot of times when you're in your 40s and 50s, like what happened to my metabolism? I could eat whatever I wanted before, and now all of a sudden I'm putting on weight gain around my midsection or whatever. I can't get rid of this stuff. Well, that's what that is. If you don't have muscle mass, you're not going to burn those calories you're taking in. That's a problem for you. And I think it's a direct result of testosterone dropping off. And then you had mentioned one other thing that's really important. We're talking about Shilajit and testosterone. And a lot of women are like, well, I'm going to avoid that. It is an adaptogen. So it's not going to affect you the same way it's going to affect the man. And when we were looking at, you had brought up some fertility studies, it actually increases the fertility of women in much the same way that it increases the fertility of men. Obviously differently because we're talking about different hormones. But if you're having, if for those folks out there who are having difficulty conceiving, this is a good alternative to, the more conventional pharmaceutical routes and a heck of a lot less expensive.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's there's actually, I think, more studies on fertility than anything I found with Shilajit, where one of the most fascinating ones is where they induced infertility in mice with cadmium, which is a heavy metal, and
hmm
then they, over a period of 2 months, gave them Shilajit. Some they didn't give Shilajit to, some they did in different amounts. And after the study was over, those mice were fertile again that got Shilajit, which is
Yep.
like an incredible testament to its, potency and, yeah, ability to get heavy metals out of the body and to, re-nourish that whole reproductive system.
it makes me think that maybe this is the ingredient that Abraham was taking, back in the day to be fertile again.
Yeah,
Going back
Absolutely.
to Billy, yeah, I had
It's biblical.
Bill, he was fertilizing stuff at 90. I mean,
it's definitely possible. He was doing his thing out there.
he was he was he was great in the world. Uh,
Okay, so that was something I didn't realize. So it's a detoxifier. It'll help to facilitate the removal of heavy metals, which I know a lot of people do struggle with. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Shilajit gets a bad name because it has heavy metals in it and, miniature amounts for the most part. There
Yep.
was an issue with it being stored in aluminum barrels when it was being shipped around or stored in India, and that's why there's this like people are concerned about the heavy metals in it. And it is a fair concern because it is, you know, this raw
Absolutely.
product coming from the earth, but because it is from the earth, it has all the elements in it, including, you know, what we considered the heavy metals. But they are in such minute amounts that they don't, you know, they're not in any way building up in the body. And quite the opposite, like you're saying, they actually hold on to them so well that they're not coming out in the body. The carbon 60 and the fulvic acid are insanely powerful chelators and are super powerfully ionically charged. So those heavy metals that are oppositely charged get trapped and actually are excreted through the body. I learned more recently that it goes just through your digestive system and out of your bowels, because it just binds to them and gets them out. And one study I found most recently was studying the lead. People that had lead poisoning and had lead in their bone marrow. And after 3 months on Shilajit, there was a drastic reduction of the lead in bone marrow, which some people say can never be removed. It can't be taken out of the body because it's in so deep. But the amazing thing about the fulvic acid, and why, you know, fulvic acid is a wonderful supplement on its own, is because it is a cell dilator and it opens the cell walls and is able to get those minerals in and those toxins out, or heavy metals, or waste product that's in there. And that's one of the components that increases the benefit for Alzheimer's or dementia or brain cognition. It's because it's opening the cell walls, it's opening the blood-brain barrier, getting that stuff out of your brain, like aluminum, which aluminum is a tau aggregator, and the tau aggregate is what causes that dementia, Alzheimer's issues. And I do believe that's why it helps with those things, is because it's not only nourishing the brain, but getting those things that are inhibiting the conductivity of it out. And it's one of the only things that I've found that can safely do that without, you know, getting those things out into the body and them piling up in your kidneys or your liver or your organs or your blood, where it's just not just like out, because it's easy to get things out, like with
Now
cilantro,
you've
for
just
example.
transferred it to another organ.
Yeah, because then it just moves around and you don't.
This is getting
That's almost
excreted.
worse than it being somewhere in your body, stuck somewhere.
True.
Worse than that would be to have it just floating around and causing havoc wherever it goes. So it's kind of a powerful substance in all regards, but detoxing, it's very gentle but very powerful.
All right. Now, absolutely, I am not a neuroscientist by any means, by any shape or means, but I did do a little bit of research, and I find this absolutely fascinating. So there's a lot of folks out there, and I personally know a lot of friends and some family members who are concerned about cognitive decline. The leading one, obviously, is Alzheimer's. So you talked about the tau proteins and how Shilajit is very good at reducing those, the buildup, which is great. That is a big driver of Alzheimer's and other cognitive declines. The other one is amyloid plaque, right? So I ended up reading a study, and again, we'll throw this in the notes, that the combination of Shilajit and certain B vitamins, because I know Shilajit has some B vitamins in there. This study had a combination of some additional B vitamins, and the B vitamins apparently are very good at neutralizing those amyloid plaques. And as you pointed out, the Shilajit, with its additional components, takes care of the tau proteins. That combination seems to be very effective in, I would assume, reversing a cognitive decline, specifically Alzheimer's.
Yeah, it has a lot of potential with those, with the compounds that it has. And just giving that nourishment and conductivity back to the brain, clearing it out. And it does have, trace amounts of actually every single protein in there, and amino acid, and 85 plus minerals, but they are in trace amounts. The beautiful thing about Shilajit is that it helps everything that you take with it to function much better, potentially 5 to 10 times better. Like there's some studies with iron, for example, where the absorption of iron was increased 10 times, or to, because you take it and then you have to digest it and then you have to assimilate it.
Right.
And for some people, their digestion is off, or those things that help the assimilation are off. So Shilajit kind of works as a taxi in that way to get these nutrients to where they need to go, and nourishes the cell enough to be able to absorb it and use it. And yeah, taking it with the B vitamins would, increase their efficacy. So I think that, yeah, it's very powerful in that way. And traditionally in Ayurvedic medicine, Shilajit is known as a rasayana or super tonic, which they would add to every other tonic that an herbalist would make or a practitioner would make. So if you have like a testosterone tonic, you would throw in Shilajit in there, or a brain tonic, throw in Shilajit, and it helps the herbs work together, helps the body be tonified and receptive to those things in there, so you get the most out of it, and you're not just relying on your body to digest it and assimilate it if you're already in a weakened state.
That makes sense. I don't know, Jason. I know you're the resident immunologist here. Obviously, trace minerals and all of these compounds was going to positively affect the immune system. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I would love to see some data on that, some studies. I'm fascinated by the Alzheimer's component of it. I think if Shilajit can have any impact on the tau protein and reducing it or reducing its expression, I think that needs to be studied. I
Yeah.
know, that's kind of like that's what scientists are after. And when we look at like cutting edge drugs, they're targeting the tau protein or the expression of it. So if Shilajit has any ability to do that, I think that could be a game changer. And that's the unconventional medicine part of our podcast. Is we are,
Yeah.
trying to. Not all the data might be there yet, right? But we're on that journey. We're on that path, and that's what I love about this podcast. Is we are talking about things that may not have come to fruition yet, but we're very, very close. And
Yeah.
that's what I love about this show. One of the things that I am always trying to understand or trying to figure out is, how do I know that the Shilajit that I'm buying is legit? Because there's so many products out there. There's so many companies, right? And I'm on TikTok and I see it's like a super hot product right now, but I don't know, honestly, if the stuff that I'm seeing on the web or TikTok is any good. I'll vouch for Nico because I've studied, I've researched the Black Lotus line, high quality stuff. But Nico, in this industry that you're in, like, how do you help people? How do you guide them in making a good decision on Shilajit?
Yeah, it's difficult because, all Shilajit is not created equal. We get Shilajit samples all the time from suppliers reaching out to us, trying to sell us what they're selling to all these other companies for dirt cheap. And, people that are just in it for a quick buck, or, selling it for super cheap on Amazon. Just no one's really making it. No one's really making the products themselves. Like, I don't know of another company that has their own facility that makes everything themselves, that tests every single batch in the US. So it's kind of difficult because it just makes me angry that there's just all these different Shilajits out there, and everyone's like, oh, it didn't really work for me. And I'm like, well, you got some like equivalent of like gas station CBD, like
Right,
of
exactly.
Shilajit. It's
Boy, this
not,
sounds familiar.
yeah. So yeah, it is difficult. You want to, we take great care in finding the best Shilajit. Our supplier asks us if we want the best or if we want a lesser quality for a cheaper price, and I swear that we get the best quality because I don't want to take anything that's somehow lower quality. I don't even know why it would be lower quality. I think it's the processing or just the source or the test that they do isn't, the best, so they sell it cheaper. And some Shilajit is super watered down, some has a red tint to it, which means it has less minerals or less nutrients in there, because you want the jet black stuff. And then the way it's processed is not good. Some of them are processed with harsh chemicals, solvents, dried with heat rather than the sun. And yeah, so it creates a lot of confusion. There's a lot of powders that are out there that are totally denatured, not good. They don't do anything. They taste terrible. And that was my first experience with Shilajit, was the powder, and it didn't do anything. It smelled terrible. It tasted somehow worse than the actual Shilajit, and it's just like hard to do. Yeah, it tasted just like chewing a pill. And yeah, it's sad. And
I love that comment. The gas station version of Shilajit. This is something that I don't think a lot of people.
It's coming to a gas station near you.
You're
telling you, man.
Yeah, the SO version. I don't think a lot of people understand that that as a manufacturer, you do get these questions from the raw material supplier. Do you want grade A, which is X price, or do you want grade D, which is way less? And you got to make that decision for your consumers, and it's not going to come out on the supplements panel. So you really got to believe in the founder and his ethics or her ethics, and making sure that they're making the right decisions. So it's a great point.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll add to that. And Nico, I'm sure you might correct me on this, but I'm going to add to that and say, the stuff that you're going to find in a health food store is almost always going to be significantly higher quality than you're going to find in like a big box retailer.
Without question.
Or a gas station. Like, that's all about like cheapest and lowest. The health food store, which is his brand. I've been into many health food stores. He's in 500 stores. It kind of makes me mad that he's grown so fast, but I'm so happy for him. But that's a different podcast. But he is or like, to get in a health food store, that's not easy. That's actually the hardest way to go.
Yeah, you have to be vetted.
They're gonna vet the heck out of you. But that's been my experience, Nico, in just my own brand.
The amount of paperwork I'd have to fill out to get into all these stores is insane. All the questions, and we have a good team, luckily, but a lot of people don't trust it. And because it all looks the same. Like, how can you tell that this is better than another black resin that smells equally as bad and tastes equally as bad and dissolves in water? It's almost impossible to tell. Or it is, unless you do lab testing and you know the source that you're getting it from and how it's being processed. And this guy wanted to be an affiliate, and he got mad because we weren't processing it according to the ancient Ayurvedic method, which is to process it with all these herbs and cow urine. And I'm like,
I heard about that.
We're not in the Middle Ages anymore. Like, we have.
Okay, wait a minute. I gotta hold on a minute. This gets processed with cow urine in some cases.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what.
Yeah, traditionally, because there's something about the acid in the cow urine that helps to cleanse the Shilajit.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I think that's just because they had poor sanitation practices. So, and cow urine is, people use it to bathe because it's, antimicrobial
For
and all that
sanitation
stuff.
purposes. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
and our source is just it's sanitary. Like, the facility where they process it is sanitary, and how they do it is sanitary. So all these herbs and cow urine aren't necessary to sanitize it, because we're not making it in a field or like in a random shack. And
Well, Nico, I'd just like to say, from all of us and all the viewers, thank you so much for not introducing the cow urine into your product.
Yeah, thank you.
I think
Yeah.
that's a selling point, personally.
Yeah,
Bring
we
me
might
back
put
to
that
my
on the
fraternal
bottle.
days, you know.
Cow urine free.
Oh, I love it.
There you go. That's a
Jason,
selling point.
Could be
do you have
certified.
anything? Do you have anything on your list that we have not asked at this point?
No, I think I'm just enamored by Shilajit. I've
Yeah.
incorporated it into my health routine. Um, and for me, it's all about, maintaining healthy testosterone levels. But I
Yep.
think Shilajit just, I've learned so much more about it today, than I ever have in the past.
Yeah. Nico, is there anything that we should know about that we have sort of left on the table that you'd like to espouse on? Any health
Um,
benefits that we didn't hit that's major?
yeah, I will just include here the process that our supplier uses to actually, process the shilajit, like how it comes out of the mountain, they harvest it, and then, essentially shilajit means stone breaker in Sanskrit because
No.
during the summer months the sun hits the rocks, breaks them open due to the shilajit expanding, and then the pressure from the weight of the mountain forces it to ooze out and kind of drip down the cliffs. And so it gets dried out, and then they go up there with, pitchforks and scrape it off the cliff. They put it in these huge, buckets. Then they dissolve all that in water. They use the local like glacier runoff spring water
Yeah,
from their
everything's
lakes
very
there.
clean, obviously.
Yeah, and then all the shilajit dissolves. They pour it through a bunch of filters, sieves, cotton pads, and that gets all the rocks, sediment, plants, clay out of the shilajit. And one of the things also that's kind of unique to our shilajit is that it doesn't have the clay in it. A lot of other shilajits won't filter out the clay because you can't really test. It doesn't really make a big difference in the structure of it. It just kind of, it's not as pure, obviously. So we get all
It
the clay out of
dilutes
ours.
the final product, I guess, huh?
Mm.
Exactly, yeah. So it just
Sure.
weighs more, but there's not as much. There's just all this random clay in it, and the clay might not be bad, but you're getting less shilajit essentially. So they process it that way in a facility, and then they let the water evaporate, or the shilajit water evaporate in the sun, and then they're left with the pure resin. And it's a super simple, super effective process of getting the shilajit cleaned and back to its original state.
Mm.
And yeah, so most people really do feel the difference between taking our tablets or other people's tablets, just because we get that high quality and there's just more shilajit per dose in it because of the processing, and it's super clean. There's no harsh acids, like I said.
Yeah.
And yeah, another super interesting part of the shilajit is its biological effects, like all the benefits. In this book, I'll kind of just read off the sections that it has because this guy is a pharmacist. He a PhD from India who studied the shilajit and did the spectrum analysis of it. He even describes the aromatherapy benefits of shilajit, which are anti-stress.
Well, it
Kind of like an
definitely has an
essential,
aroma. I
yeah,
agree with
just like
that.
a essential oil would give you benefits. The
Hmm.
actual, yeah, he breaks down every single like scent molecule in the shilajit as well. But the most interesting part of this book to me is just all the different benefits. Like he goes into the anti-ulcerogenic effect of shilajit. It's extremely good for ulcers in your stomach and your like leaky gut,
Yeah, I have
stomach
read that.
lining,
There's
intestinal
yeah,
lining.
massive benefits for digestively, and I don't know if that's just from the humic acid. Probably it's not just that or limited to that. It's all of that's really important. And I believe we're going to have the book in the show notes too, so the viewers can catch up with that and start do their deep dive if they like. But I mean, honestly, this podcast could go on forever. The benefits of Shilajit are really incredible. My hat's off to the first human that came across this black tar that's oozing out of a mountain and decided to start eating that. I think that's, I don't know how that happened, but thank God that person did that. But anyway, this is not typical, I will say, of our show to really highlight and spotlight an ingredient like this. But I do think that this ingredient has been on Jason and mine list for a while. I think it's really important. You could tell just by the amount of health topics that we're hitting, how important this thing is. And Nico, if people want to find you after this, how do they connect with you?
Yeah, so you can find us at Black Lotus Shilajit on Instagram, and our website is blacklotusshilajit.com.
Awesome. Listen, it was awesome having you. Jason, as always, good to have you on. Thank you for
Great to
doing
be
your
on.
research. You did a great job. So this has been another episode of Unconventional Medicine. I hope to catch you on the next one. If you enjoyed this, like and subscribe.